And I guess I don't have to introduce the next one very extensively. He did that already in the keynote. He called himself the updating guy, and as I noticed earlier, also the security guy who makes sure that we don't stumble upon the cables that are not properly secured. So give a warm applause for Karsten.
Yeah, hello. Well, that's. I have a first question. Who attended NEOS Conference 2022 in Dresden? That are here. Okay, who attended this? It's good. Good. Okay. On the other hand, I could have about the sound, maybe, or I don't know. It would have been interesting to know if there were more that attended it the last time. Did it help or didn't it? But then we skip that part. So updating NEOS, why, when, and how? As mentioned, I did that 2 years ago. I have streamlined parts a bit, and I have then added new parts on NEOS 9, which I think might be interesting to a few of you. So that's me. I'm Karsten. Since 2005, that has been a few. They saw a few years, and whenever you create a new release, you need to update things. So I've been doing a few upgrades over the years, in our own projects for customers. And most recently, I actually did an upgrade from a Flow application that was running on Flow 3.0.2, and that has essentially not been touched since 2013. And then they realized that maybe updating would be a good thing to do. So yeah, I'm the updating guy somehow. So basically, I mean, obviously, the three main questions are, why do you update? Well, because you get new features and you get bug fixes. And when? Well, as fast as possible, as soon as you can, right? I mean, there's a new version, you update, and then how you do that? Well, you read the instructions. It's also about people, they always read all the upgrade instructions and they never complain about things breaking and being changed and stuff. So, I mean, we also know that. And then you test and maybe deploy it, and then you're done, and then it's ready. And then I had this slide last time I did this, and everyone was a bit like confused because that's obviously not the whole story. So let's look into in a bit more detail. So why should you update? Well, obviously, yeah, there are new features. There are fewer bugs, hopefully. From time to time, we add new bugs to tease you. But well, mostly it's an oversight. I mean, if we do, it's by accident. And you get better performance. So usually when you look at changelogs, be it NEOS or Flow, or be it, I don't know, any other tool you use, you have a lot of features to gain. And you have a lot of bugs that are no longer, which usually is quite nice for you and your customers. Also, outdated versions usually, I mean, they stop getting support. You don't get bug fixes, or you don't get security fixes, which would be, an even more important topic, because you don't want these guys to wear hoodies in your company, or to these guys hacking your styling. So security is really important, because you lose security support. It's not really something that NEOS and Flow have a problem with. If you look at the amount of security advisories that we had to put out in the future, this is still an extensive list. There's this one is actually the only one that was added since the last time I gave this talk. So I'm quite happy about that. But I mean, you have other tools in your stack, and other tools also might have security issues. They get new features, they get bugs fixed, and there are even essential things like your language, your programming language that is in development. And you see today, well, actually yesterday was May 29th, and it's quite nice. I mean, 8.2 and 8.3, you still have two versions of PHP that are supported. And I remember back in the days when we urged everyone to finally ditch PHP to go to PHP 7, 8, and by now I think people have picked up the habit of updating their PHP more often and more rapidly, which is a very good thing, because you don't want to reach that orange stage in your programming languages lifecycle for your projects ever. Other things, I don't know, Elasticsearch, your testing tools, your server software. I mean, you update all the nitty-gritty details of your server software. You update your OS. I mean, you even update your telephones every once in a while. Something that I find very helpful for finding end-of-life dates is end-of-life.date, which in this case is way more clear on Elasticsearch, for example, than the Elasticsearch website itself, which is a pain. Find out what actually is supported and for how long. So now, when should you update? Who is skipping .0 release intentionally? Either Neos or Flow or anything else? Shall I believe that it's only 3 people? Well, maybe we've become better at managing, .0 releases. But I remember times where people were like, yeah, you can't do that. Wait for the 0.1 at least, or maybe the .1 even, because new things used to have more bugs than because they added new features, which meant new bugs, and then you waited for the first patch level release or 2, and then now we can use the new features without the new bugs, which is good. But still, if you do it often, you get into the habit of doing it. You practice doing it. Actually, you know the tooling that you may need around updates. I mean, by now I assume that people have their deployments updated, at least to production in the important parts of their projects. So it's not as painful as it used to be some years ago. But do it often, do it regularly. It keeps the steps smaller and it makes it easier. And still, people sometimes say, but I mean, updating, that's a lot of work. We did it once, and it broke the site. And that's true, it can happen, but then again, you don't do SSH root at live server composer update, do you? Hopefully not. So you have a staging instance. I mean, you test it locally, you have a staging instance, you have a current backup, you have a rollback strategy for when things actually go wrong. So in all that being said, if things still do really break on your production rollout, it's very, very rare that the actual update is the problem. It's something else in your stack that goes wrong and they didn't catch early enough. So okay, we would update, but we don't need the new stuff. Never change a running system. Yes, I can relate to that to some degree. There are tools and parts of systems that I'm maintaining that I'd rather leave as is because they work and it's a lot of work to update. But eventually, as with that 13-year-old project, I have seen projects where people had to update within 4 weeks because the hoster is switching off PHP 5 finally. That was 2 years ago, actually. They had a Neos 1 site. It's awesome that this Neos 1.0 site was still running, but then again, also not. So, there are a lot of reasons that you can't even influence that might force you to update. New legal requirements, GDPR, anyone, we have to add this, but no one knows exactly how the front-end rendering works, so we can't add a choice for the cookies, and then we need to take the site down or be faced with legal threats. And then, if you do it more often than just every few years, it might actually be a good thing. And then there's always this mission-critical site that can't be updated because it can't be down for the update. Yeah, well, basically it's the same thing as with the it broke our site. You do test it first. And if it's really mission-critical, you have a staging instance. Otherwise, well, who defines what is mission-critical? And also, you probably can do a rolling deployment because you have multiple instances running for that mission-critical site. So even if that first rollout goes wrong, you just don't, add that new server to your load balancer and, just quietly do it again, and no one will ever notice, which is cool. And then last but not least, we only use LTS versions, which we kind of cater to ourselves. I just said that we'll be having an 8.4 release. But let me point out two things, and that is anything in 8, for example, NIOS 8, lives same life. That's just the way we do things. I mean, the bug fixes that we do made to the lowest supported branch, and then they are upmerged. So whatever you do, you can always upgrade. You don't have to wait for 8.3 to go to 8. You can go to 8.0, 8.1, 8.2, and keep progressing. And the same will be true for 9 and 10, and I think we'll skip 11 and then maybe go to 14 right away. But you get the idea. Just don't be afraid of using the interim releases between LTSs because they are fine and they are getting all the bug fixes. It's just that the last one gets a bit longer support in the end, as you can also see here. So it's not, that's actually, it says yesterday on that slide if you look closely. So how should you update? I mentioned, basically you read the documentation, the release notes, the upgrading documentation that we put out. It's the same for every tool. You look forward to the new features, you look forward to bugs being squished, and then you do a few adjustments here and there. So basically, for a Flow and NIOS project, the exact steps are on this slide. So inform yourself first, upgrade your packages using Composer, do a dry run, check the results. It will probably complain about some third-party dependency that is not yet updated to allow for the new version of Flow or NIOS that you want to use. So you either fix that, create a PR, or you just wait. It can be fine. You just say, okay, I'll try next week, and then I'll try the week after until everyone gets their packages updated. So at some point you will be having a Composer update succeed, and then you commit the result, and then you do run the core migrations that we provide. Check the result of those core migrations. We put that all in separate Git commits for you. You can, rebase them. You can adjust them, amend them as you like. And then you have a code base that should hopefully work. Then you probably need to run a doctrine migrate on your project. And then you start, testing all the hidden things in your project that might have been broken or that are really important, or where that you did a kind of a creepy workaround to make it work, or I don't know, even used AOP or signal slot, and you make sure that those things still work. Ideally, you have that automated, I don't know, crawl your whole website, do a visual comparison, and everything looks the same. Great. It will probably miss the backend no longer sending out emails when an order comes in or something, but, well, someone will notice that orders stopped coming in and tell you, hopefully. If not, well, yeah. So I guess you know about those patch level releases. That's something you should always just do. I mean, they are solely for the purpose of removing bugs, so just do them. Usually, I mean, we sometimes just do them alongside doing something else on a customer project. Minor releases add new features. They don't have breaking changes, so by definition, they are also safe to apply. Footnote, your mileage may vary, but usually they are also okay to do. And major releases are the ones that require manual work most of the time, because by definition in semantic versioning, a major release can contain breaking changes. So there you need to be more careful than for any other release type. In the case of Neos, you don't need to do them step by step, the updates. You don't need to go from 8.0 to 8.1 and then to 8.2 in separate. You can do that, but there's no need to do that. We had one thing when you went from Neos 1 to 3, you had to do 2 in between, but that's the only exception to the rule. You can just go to your target version, but always need all the release notes in between, because we don't duplicate all the stuff. So read all that, check up on your dependencies. If you have dependencies that you cannot upgrade, so Composer says, well, I don't know, I'm supposed to install this one, but it says it's incompatible with the new version that you want. You need to find out is there already a version that allows that. You can, of course, go to packages and just check it. If you're ever unsure of what package versions do I actually allow in my Composer manifest, there's this tool out on the internet that you can put a dependency name in and a version constraint string, and it will show you all the versions that it would install, which can be quite interesting if you're not too deep into the version constraints syntax of Composer. So then you do your dry run update, and then you, as I said, you commit the changes to the log file, and you run the core migrations and clean up. And then what I usually do, and I really recommend that, is clean up whatever core migrate did to your code. Because in a lot of cases, it will just say, I didn't do anything, because there was no need to change your code. So you can just squash those commits together to have a cleaner history. You might want to reorder things, or you might add something that a core migration missed, and have that in one commit, if you like. And for me personally, that makes it a lot easier to see when actually did this update happen, what did it actually mean to my code base. Further adjustments, there are things that we can't really automate in the core migration tooling. So these are some examples from the past where, in Fusion we had this default prototype generator that at some point we removed. And that meant that there were suddenly a lot of property assignments missing. Since before everything was there, and we have no way of knowing which ones do you actually use in your templates, well, you have to add those manually, because you know what the code does. Our tooling is just too stupid for that. Then we had these logger adjustments where we had a different log method, but actually it was the same name, but it had a different method signature, so it seemed to work, except that the log message would just be the log level, and the log level would always be the message cast to int, which was not really helpful. Or, the fluid view helpers did not have arguments to the render method anymore. That one was, I love that. A lot of work. And then our HTTP components, PSR 7 introduction in Flow, was it 8? Or was it something 7? I don't even remember. Also meant a lot of manual work. That brings us to Neos 9. Because this time it's not just, another major version upgrade. It's, on the one hand, being easier than the change, for example, adjusting to PSR 7 or to the logging, because we will have more automation this time for changes to your PHP code and to your Fusion code than we did for those releases. And on the other hand, if you did interesting stuff, then it's probably going to be more challenging than the last major releases. So let's look at the steps for upgrading a Neos 9 site. It's basically, in the beginning, it looks very similar. You obviously need to pull in the Neos 9 version, and then potentially pull in other packages that are, need to be updated to a new major version, possibly to allow for use with Neos 9. So you are in this cycle, but that's the same as with every other minor or major release. You need to have all your dependencies together and supporting your new package or your new Neos version or Flow version. And then you will need probably something new that we don't install by default because there might be different implementations. So most of you will install the Neos Content Repository Registry Doctrine DBAL client package. We are famous for the very memorable names. Because most of you will probably run Neos 9 on MySQL or probably MySQL in the foreseeable future. We are working on a very, very nice Postgres implementation that will have a lot more bang to the buck, but that's still taking a while. And now if you have your code updated, if Composer ran through and said, yes, Composer update successful, you can always just try to run Flow or Flow help. And then maybe it even compiles, although I can't really promise that it will. So you do what you did for 8.3, you run core migrate, which will do things to your code as it always did. And that is the interesting part of this, you will install a new package called Neos Rector, which is based on PHP Rector. Who of you knows about PHP Rector? Oh, that's good. And who has even used it? That's about the same number of people. That's great. So it's a great tool to piggyback on and say, well, we add our own migrations. So you basically do this. You say, Rector, do a dry run, tell me what you would change, and then you do it, and then you commit the result, or you check it and adjust it. And then you try running Flow again, and maybe it compiles now. That would be good. And if not, then you need to dig into the code and make it compile. I would not try to do more than you absolutely need to have Flow compile the proxy classes successfully without complaining about missing interfaces and undefined methods and whatnot. Just make it compile for now. Then check your configuration. If you have routes configuration, for example, and you have node arguments in your routes, then front-end node route part handler is no more. It's now a front-end node route part handler interface because things changed. But that's really just this. It's just changing the class name for your route part. You need to adjust your content dimensions if you have them configured, because they are now, well, it's not actually per site, it's per content repository. You can now have multiple content repositories in the same system, which is mind-boggling and very useful at the same time. So you need to move the content dimensions configuration around a bit. And there's probably more to come that I haven't seen yet in terms of adjusting the configuration. Now, the most interesting part for a content management system probably is how to migrate your content. And that, I have to say, is the part that is working really well already. So you need to do a bit of a preparation work on your existing data. Then you prepare the new content repository, which is, in this case, really a simple step. Then we have yet another tool for migrating your content, and then you just do that. You run it, and it works, hopefully, for you as well. I mean, of course, ideally, you have 8.3 already. You are on the latest version of the doctrine schema, because you do run doctrine migrate whenever you update. Try to fix your content repository. If you still have properties in your nodes that are no longer in your node types, try to get rid of them. Fix node types that don't exist anymore at all, because that is really a showstopper. Add default values that you might be missing. Clean things up. You can use node repair to fix it. Just don't run it blindly and say yes to everything. Take a careful look at the output and what it suggests. But the cleaner your data is before you migrate, the less verbose your migration output will be, and it makes it a lot easier to spot actual errors and not have them drown in a sea of "this property does no longer exist" messages. One other thing is, I mean, a lot of people by now do this in your Neos projects. You absolutely need to have a dedicated node type for your site's root page, for your homepage. It needs to be of the, or at least has the mix-in Neos site. So if you don't have that in your current site, you cannot migrate. But well, that's not a problem. I'll explain. Hey Siri. If you have your own dedicated node type already, you just add the new super type to it. If you don't have it, you just invent one. Whatever node type you currently use for your homepage, take that, add this as a super type, add Neos site as a super type, and then change your existing homepage node. Right now, you need to do that manually in the database. At that point, your old site will no longer work because Neos site is not a known node type. Yes, that's true. But the new one will need it. Then you set up the new content repository, which is a highly complex task that involves calling one command that's called cr setup. It will create a number of tables that are all empty at that point, but if you have those tables in your database, either your existing one or a new one, that's up to you to decide. You can do both. Then this is done. And then you install the new migration tooling, the Neos content repository legacy node migration. Isn't that a nice word? It's not old, it's legacy, which gives it I don't know, I think it feels more worthy somehow. And this tool will then ask you a few questions, and it basically, I mean, I stripped the messages in between about things not being completely right, but that's if it works, you get this output. It asks you where your persistent resources are. If they are in a cloud storage, you can just leave them there and ignore that. It asks you for your database connection. You can give a different connection to an existing database to just read the data from if you have a new one for your Neos 9 setup. And then you need to tell it which of the existing sites, you may have multiple sites in your setup, you actually want to migrate. And then it goes ahead and clears everything from the new CR that might already be there. Exports all the assets and their metadata, exports all the nodes into events. So this, I don't know, it's nowhere near 1,800 pages in that test site, but it creates quite a number of events. And then those are imported again. And then it just says replaying projections, which takes a while, and then it's done. And then you call up your front end and see, well, could be white screen, or it could be an exception, or maybe even your homepage already. It depends a bit on your Fusion code. Some of the things that you need to adjust will have been done automatically already. Check those changes. The migrations we have for your Fusion will leave instructions for you and tell you to do some things manually. Because some of the Fusion constructs that you need to adjust are ambiguous, which is why you need to look at them and figure out, do I actually need the property here, or should I use, I don't know, a new helper, I don't know, caching tags, for example. You should be using an EL helper for that anyway. It exists already, but if you don't do it yet, you must do it for Neos 9. These things you need to check. If you're using fluid templates still, that's another thing where you need to manually do things to make it work. But I have the experience so far that if you do a pure Fusion rendering setup, you're probably up and running quite fast with Neos 9 after an update. Now, the interesting thing is, what did you do beyond just rendering with Fusion? If you do import and export to the content repository directly nowadays. You're using the PHP API, and that absolutely must be adjusted. There's no way around that, because the PHP API of the content repository has fundamentally changed. Make no mistake, this is nowhere close to what you... I mean, you still have nodes and workspaces and the content repository, but everything in between is kind of new. So whenever you touch nodes directly in your PHP code, you have to adjust things. And I collected a few bits that kind of micro recipes to update things. Some of those can also, not the ones that I collected, but some recipes like these can be found in the most recent release notes, in the discussion forum on Beta 10, for example. Mark Henry collected things that you need to do now differently than in Beta 9. And that is also one of the reasons why there is no comprehensive upgrade guide yet, because if I had written one already, I would be mad, because I would have had to change it so many times. Because as I said earlier, there's still changes happening to Neos 9 that adjust things and make it easier to work with, thankfully, than now. So these micro recipes, sometimes I was like, okay, so I had 3 lines of code in the old CR, and now I need 12. This is ridiculous. And we are now back to maybe 5, which is okay. So given the new things you can do with the new CR, that's definitely a trade-off that is worth it. So, but that's still the thing that you need to do. The more complex and the more custom your code is, obviously, the lower are the chances we can migrate it automatically. Now and then, if you get stuck, whether upgrading to 8.3 or 8.4 in preparation of going to Neos 9, or actually doing a migration to Neos 9, whenever you get stuck, maybe you're not the first one to have that problem. I mean, sometimes I think I'm always the only one to have a problem, because it seems unsolvable. But in reality, someone has had that, and at least you can share ideas and discard things that someone already tried that also don't help, and then eventually you come to a solution. You can always ask the Neos community for help on Slack, on the discussion forum. You can ask your agency if you are an end client. You can always say, hey, Florent, we got that problem in our website. Go ahead and fix it, and then someone at your agency will take care of it. Or you just, ask me, for example, if you are an agency, for example. So then you do the test and deploy thing again, and eventually your site is up and running, unless you run into a problem after your update, which most of the time comes down to 2 possible causes. You made a mistake, and even if it's only the mistake of not seeing that bug in your testing on your staging instance before, it's still your fault somehow. Or you actually found a bug that somehow magically did not appear on your staging instance. That can happen. Then it's our fault, as in the community, which includes you, so it's also kind of your fault. But yeah, I mean, then you have also everyone here to help you fix it, which is good, I think. Just make sure to have a bug report that is really good, ideally describe how to reproduce it, and so on and so on, so someone from the community can tackle that and fix it. So I think this is clear by now. You should do it. You should try to do it regularly and often and early. Don't be over-enthusiastic. Maybe be careful whenever you do things. The more important your site is, the more careful you should be. And then always make sure to read the instructions and ask your fellow Neosians for help if there's anything that you lack in your upgrading knowledge. That's it so far. So thank you. And I think there might be questions even. I don't know.
I have quite some questions for you. So you can always put some questions in, I'll ask them as long as you keep coming. So first one, will Neos and Flow be added to end of life date?
Ah, good point. Yeah, we could do that, I guess. I mean, yeah. I mean, because I know about the end of life dates of Neos, it didn't occur to me that it might be useful to have it there. But yeah, but that's actually a good idea. Yeah, that's good.
So next one up is looking into the future. Will we need to migrate to Neos 9 before migrating to 10, or could we skip it?
Well, as I said, so far we only had one release where you actually had to do it, and that is because at that point you needed to have the database structure of Neos 2 in place so you could run migrations that actually adjusted the data inside. So given that this was the only point in time where we ever had that, I think it should be doable to go from 8 to 10 whenever that is released. Because you still could do the content migration tooling step when coming from 8 and go directly to 10, assuming that because the way this migration tool works, it exports your thing, your data to events, essentially. It's a large JSON lines file. Each line has an event that basically says, well, create this node, adjust this property, do this, do that. And then this raw data is passed to the import service of Neos 9. And then if you just assume that this raw data format is not changing, you could just take that output and put it into the import service of Neos 10, and it would just accept it and read it and import it. So I think you could do it like we can do it now. If you go from 5 to 8, you can just do that. You don't need to do it. And I see no reason why it should be different for 10, to be honest.
Thank you. So can you point out things that no longer work after an upgrade to 9.0?
Rendering your website, maybe? Well, it's a tricky question. I mean, there are it really depends a lot on what your site does, what you did, how complex your code is. If it's a fairly recent creation, you are probably using Fusion code that is, our current best practice. You're not using, I don't know, raw array anymore in your Fusion and things like that. Then you're better off. There are things that definitely don't exist anymore. Like in floor query, you have the context operation. Don't confuse it with the floor query context, the thing you put into your queue, queue node, whatever. And if you then call dot context, so this context operation to get a node in a different workspace, for example, or in another content dimension, that simply does not exist. There will be new EEL helpers or flow query operations, and there will be migrations to replace those context calls, but that's something that has just changed. So it could be that it breaks if the migration misses one instance of this in your code. And there are other things also in the PHP API that just don't exist anymore, that are fundamentally different. But it really very much depends on what you do in your code. That makes the difference between an upgrade being hard or very easy.
So, and how would I prepare a public package for Neos 9? Where can I get help with that?
First of all, you need to decide how much work you want to have with that. And that's kind of the answer to the question, if you do it now or if you wait a little more. That again depends on how deep your package interacts with Neos. If you have something that is, well, I don't want to offend anyone, but I mean, in fact, just some Fusion that integrates some third-party service or does magic rendering and and the complexity is in, I don't know, web components and JS, and the flow side is rather easy, then you should just try it. I mean, raise the version dependency, get yourself a Neos 9 installation, raise or allow Neos 9 for your package, install it, and see if it still works and what you need to adjust. And if you need help with that, just stop by in Slack or in our discussion forum and ask for help, saying, I want to update this, and I'm stuck at point X. What should I do? And I'm sure that someone will help you, because the more packages are updated already, the easier it becomes for everyone else to upgrade when all the other packages are already working. So actually, just go for it. Give it a go, give it a try. I'll be publishing a rough first upgrading documentation soon-ish, like kind of, I don't know, throughout June, that at least has, the rough steps, and then you can try and play around.
So speaking of documentation, have you any suggestions for tools that work well with front-end development? Good screenshot, video support, seems a must.
Well, I'm not the perfect front-end person, to be honest. I should have been at the center stage and learn about front-end architecture, probably. When it comes to updating, I just recently found or looked for a few tools that do regression testing in the sense of diffing site output. You can store snapshots and things like that. So if that's what you have in mind, then there are tools to help you with making sure your upgrade didn't break your front-end stuff. When it comes to learning about doing front-end stuff, maybe ask, I don't know. No
maybe
one
not
here that I immediately recognize as, that I would go to. Yeah, maybe to Robert. Yeah, you can ask Robert Bauer about front-end stuff. That's true.
So should I change my custom code to be event sourced already? I'm not going to say yes. Also, I'm not going to say no. It depends on what you do. If what you do is kind of inherently event-driven, then it might be a good fit. If the code you have, on a conceptual level, is just fine. I mean, you can certainly think about it, and think about what it would mean for your code base to be rewritten or refactored to being event sourced. But it's not trivial. It solves a number of problems very nicely. It also creates a new category of problems that you are not aware of yet. And it's not the silver bullet. So I'd say it depends. My kids hate that. Why is that? It depends. So I guess the next one will not be an easier question as well. What is the release date of 8.4?
I don't know.
It's a Tuesday.
It's probably a Tuesday, because we have this kind of habit of releasing releases on Tuesday most of the time. But we also do Fridays, and I mean, we don't care. But no, I don't know. It depends on when we have, the things done that we say, okay, this is worth it. We have enough features there. Some of these things are still being discovered, so who knows?
But we have a plan, but the team doesn't allow us to tell about it. That's true.
Yeah. It's so secret that I don't even know about their plan, to be honest.
So 2 more questions to go. After an update, how do you deal with issues that appear only on production or staging and not in your local environment?
Yeah, that's a classic. I mean, that's even independent of updating. It's always this Heisenbuggy thing that's like, but no, and you just can't reproduce it. Well, I mean, I hate to admit it, but sometimes I even go on servers and fire up VI and change things in some proxy class file inside data temporary and write things to some file to look at. It can be really hard. I mean, if you can't reproduce it, I mean, there must be a reason. I mean, that's, you know, if it's not happening on your machine, but on staging and on live, then there is a difference. I mean, there must be a difference. If it happens only once a month, there still is a trigger that does it, and it must be something that you can reproduce. You just have to find it, and that can be incredibly hard. And probably, I mean, as Leonard just told us about their logging to find performance issues, something like that also helps with finding those issues, because if you know every single step that your customers take or your users take, then you also can, you know, pinpoint that one time a month when it fails. But I don't have a really great answer to that. There's no magic tooling that I know of, except, you know, do logging, take a look at your exceptions regularly. Don't let 100,000 exception traces pile up and then, oh, somewhere there's an error. Try to be proactive, and then if something like that happens, then yeah, good luck.
So one last question: which SQL database do you recommend for the new CR?
Postgres, as soon as you can use it. Well, I mean, the whole database access has been changed as well. It's no longer purely ORM driven. The event source code below that is doing a lot of direct, sometimes native calls, sometimes through database abstraction of doctrine. So far, the Neos content repository doctrine DBAL adapter, I think it was called, is the thing that, you know, does it all. The adapter for Postgres specifically, I mean, this can also, in theory, talk to Postgres, obviously, but, well, there will be a dedicated Postgres one coming up. Bernhard is working on that. I'm very much looking forward to it, and I've heard incredible things about it, but it's not on par with the other adapter and the whole set of packages, because, you know, we only have one Bernhard and he can either work on this or on that, and so we all collectively have him rather work on things that everyone benefits from, and, you know, more places in the code than just this adapter. But my gut feeling is, once that is ready to use, I would love to go to Postgres, because it's just an incredible database. Then again, if it's a lot of work for you, make sure it's worth it first. I mean, feel free to try it, but, you know, just don't do it and invest a lot of time just because I said it's cool. Make sure you measure it, maybe.
So thank you, Karsten, for this updated talk. And before I let you go into the lunch break, we will continue here on the studio stage at 2 p.m. in time again. So we are right on schedule.
Yeah, like 2 minutes.
And have a nice lunch. Don't forget to rate the talks. Don't forget to ask your questions via the app. Thank you very much.